So we're gonna get fucked up on Thursday.
Oh yeah, bar chef baby.
With Michael.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the only one fine. At least our shows are on Sunday. We don't have a 10 a.m.
Oh, that's
show
true.
the next day.
I mean, there's 3 days, you know?
I mean, knowing you, that's still not enough.
That's true. It was like
Need like a month lead time.
Fuck, man, that was... I can't deal with that again. That was too much. As long as we don't end up at bar chef, I think we'll be fine.
You don't think that, like, I make your medical situation worse, do you?
Huh. I actually have to go get an IV tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, the next 3 days, I have to get IV.
Oh.
For steroids.
Great.
Welcome to Dr. DC. What you gonna do when the Metamorpho comes to you?
That's what steroids do, baby. First thing they change is your voice.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking come this weekend and roid it up.
This is all cold open?
I don't know, I guess. Welcome to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother.
Oh, we're coming to Toronto.
That's right. Toronto Comic Con from March 15th to the 17th.
Our live show's on Sunday.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah. That's 11:15 a.m.
Yeah, to enter the ring.
Yeah, to also leave because we only have so much time.
Yeah, and we have another show later on.
Yeah, we need rest.
Yeah, and I probably will still be drunk. It's a problem.
Baby.
Yeah, no.
I told someone else this story recently about us getting...
completely fucking shit-faced?
Well, as much as I can... at Bar Chef when we were in Toronto last year.
Yeah.
And then us walking home and then me being like, street meat will help counter drunk.
Yeah.
Because that's true.
A thing I barely remembered
for
doing.
me. But I bought you a street meat. You ate it. And then you spent the whole rest of the night being like, oh no. Oh no.
And then sleeping
you
in
were
the bathroom.
like fucking Team America. Like,
Yeah.
You gave up on life, didn't you?
God, that was literally a nightmare. That was so bad.
We had like a 10:30 show the next day.
Where I literally was like, I don't think I'm going to do this. And you were like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
You were not pleased with me.
No, I wasn't.
Even
But
though
also,
you participated in what happened.
Probably should have known better, but...
But also, you like to ride the lightning because you know.
Well, this is the thing. This is how this story came up when I was telling it to somebody else. Is because I was like, I'm not that social. It drives me nuts how social you are. But it also, objectively, like, cool shit happens.
Well, this is the thing.
When you get social. And then, but it's like, there's got to be a middle line.
No.
Because it was like, oh, yeah, this is a nice enough bar. I guess I'll get a drink. And then it was like, we're 6 drinks in.
Friends with the entire staff.
They're like grabbing the top shelf stuff. It's like, oh, shit, fuck.
Yeah, I unequivocally don't know how to do things a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a thing that you accuse me of.
Sure. But that's you emotionally.
Yeah, where I have great range.
Yeah, I am
It's
like
all
that
or nothing.
with activities.
Yeah.
You're like that with the way you are.
Yeah. Because I want it all.
Nothing at all.
Do you know what we should do?
What?
We should fucking karaoke.
Oh my God. I mean, you get me enough drinks in me, and oh, definitely.
I mean, enough drinks. I mean, that's the cheapest bill in the world. Enough drinks for you is like 2.
I mean, that bar chef bill was not cheap, but
I mean, we didn't. Oh, I guess no.
We did cover some of that.
Paid some of it.
Yeah.
Still though.
Yeah. Where do we want to go? Let's see what I can get us at the Ontario place.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're just drinking a 2-4 of Cool under the Gardner Expressway.
Yeah, this weekend. I mean, if you guys aren't coming to Toronto, you guys are missing out.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
We're gonna get fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but I'm having requests for some of our evening time.
I did see from No Quest for the Wicked.
From some podcast friends.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. That's hell yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
We're like part of the like Toronto podcast community now, you know?
You know, like, listen, when you have acclaim such as ours,
notoriety.
Here's what I'd say. Like, greatness begets greatness. And all of us cools want to hang out together.
That's right.
What's cooler than being cool?
Ice cold.
All right.
That's kind of how our personalities work together.
Okay, now, ladies.
Yeah.
I just need to break this down for just a few seconds.
Okay. Each week we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you.
Lend me some sugar. I'm your neighbor.
Okay.
Is that not how he delivers that line? It's me begging on the door. It's an Outcast song.
You better help.
Lend me some sugar. I'm your neighbor.
This week we're talking about Metamorpho.
Baby.
A character that I'm surprised we haven't talked more about. But a character we love.
I love Metamorpho. He's like definitely when people ask like what kind of like C-list or like more obscure whatever characters do you like.
This is the problem when I know
Metamorpho's always up there for me.
This is how I know that I've been doing this podcast too long is that I'm like C-list Metamorpho.
I saw the indignation. Like, he's on The Outsiders.
Yeah.
He was Yeah, I fucking love Metamorpho, and part of that's like the design and stuff. It's a character we've talked about a little bit on other episodes. But yeah, I mean, definitely one that I think has maybe now become my new benchmark for like how chill is like a cool comics person. Like, not in the gatekeepy way, but it's like, when you see someone who's like, how much can I nerd out with you?
Yeah.
Metamorpho is, if someone has like a Metamorpho take, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like we're doing this. Yeah. Like
this feels like somebody that you can actually like get down with.
I think another thing that's like maybe not talked about enough, but Metamorpho is a relatively early character whose co-creator is a woman.
Oh, really?
So Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon co-created Metamorpho.
Oh, that's dope.
It's been around since the 60s or something like that. Like, I have Metamorpho #2. I think you got that for me at one point. Yeah, just a cool character with a wacky design where he's like sort of like in 4 quadrants and they're each a different kind of material or whatever. He's got a cool power of transmutation and sort of like changing his molecules and stuff like that. And I don't know. I always liked Metamorpho. I did go back and check. I was like, did we do a Metamorpho episode?
Yeah,
and we haven't.
It feels like
has
it's
come up
we
on
have.
other episodes
that
are adjacent to him, but we've never just dedicated one before.
Well, here we go.
Yeah, baby.
Let's get into the questions. First, we're heading over to Facebook.
Going to the face and the book. Going to the Facebook.
First question comes from Kyle Sylvie.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, oh my God. This is a very Russian segment. But
okay.
What are Metamorpho's weaknesses?
So, Metamorpho, like I said, so he's the element man. He can transform himself into any element or even like combinations of things. He can make himself air as opposed to just oxygen, although depends on which era you're reading because that like morphs over time. In the original thing,
metamorphs over time
in like fucking so good. In the older comics, he could only turn into elements that are found in the human body, and B, he was turning into like elements, iron, oxygen, like very specifically. In later ones, it was like steel or air or, a poison gas or a whatever. But if you read the old ones, even when he wants to do something like it'd be like fluorine, like that's poisonous, but it's like, it's one element. So his powers have morphed over time. his name is Rex Mason. He's a sort of adventurer for hire. Not like necessarily. He's not like Indiana Jones because he's not like a professor.
Sure.
But he's a sort of like he's a kind of amateur archaeologist in that he like hunts for treasures and stuff for things. And he's working for this industrialist named Simon Stagg, who wants this artifact called the Orb of Ra, which is in Egypt. And the Orb of Ra, Stagg wants to use it as some sort of energy source or whatever.
Is that always been his origin? I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he goes and he discovers the Orb of Ra. He's betrayed by Simon Stagg's henchman, Java, who is a caveman who was unfrozen and then given advanced intellect.
Oh, sure.
And being exposed to the energies of the Orb of Ra.
Which there's 2 cavemen who've become intelligent.
Yes, but very different ways. But yes.
Have they interacted?
Java and Vandal Savage? Yeah. Great question. Technically, there's a third, the Immortal Man.
Let us speak in our native tongue. Ooh, ooh, ya, ooh, dee, ooh, ah.
That's offensive.
Is it?
Maybe. I also thought you were going to do the Donkey Kong like TV show themed. Ooh, ah, Donkey Kong. Ooh, So he's bathed in this radiation and it transforms him into a Metamorpho. Because there's more than one Metamorphi out there.
Mm-hmm. Would his like need to be like connected to that thing be a weakness?
So his one weakness is the Orb of Ra, which actually cancels out his powers.
Sure.
So he actually can't transmute himself. He can't shapeshift. He can't turn from a solid to a gas in the presence of the Orb of Ra. It sort of works on a kryptonite principle of like proximity and intensity and all those kind of factors. But Metamorpho's like one specific like weakness is the Orb of Ra. However, you could also do things where it's like, is he oxygen? Is oxygen combustible? You could do like shit like that. Or like, oh, he made himself iron. Can he rust? Like, he has all of, because he's the element man, he will take on the properties of those elements or whatever. So it's not that he only has one weakness, but the one that will like actually affect his powers particularly is the Orb of Ra.
Isn't he like weak to magic too, though?
I mean, only in the way that everyone is. The Orb of Ra is itself magic. I mean, Metamorpho, this may be another thing I find interesting about him, is that he's like, his powers are so sciencey.
Yeah.
But they come from magic.
Yeah.
It's not a lab experiment.
Sure.
It's, you know what I mean? It's like, a magic orb gave me this hyper-specific molecule power.
Yeah, that is weird.
It's already kind of a weird premise. Maybe it's part of why I like it, I guess. But, yeah, he's not like more vulnerable to magic than anyone else, though.
Does he have to take, like, does he have to like concentrate on what he's doing so that he can do? So if he's like stressed out, it maybe is difficult to like use his powers.
There's a little bit. I mean, there's been versions of like the New 52 Metamorpho. His thing was like, as he was getting used to his powers, if he used them too much, he would like his emotion. He couldn't regulate his emotions. He would sort of become a little mindless. That's not always been a thing. He does have to concentrate. There was a time where he could split himself into duplicates that could sort of walk around and operate like golems. But when he had split a duplicate off of himself, he couldn't do other abilities like transmute or stuff like that. Like he could only do one or the other. He'd have to reabsorb them before he could become a gas or
yeah.
So there have been some different versions of those kind of things, but his only real true superhero style weakness is the Orb of Ra.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next question.
Okay.
From Ryan Putney.
Oh my goodness, so Russian.
That's great.
A totally cool thing to be.
Yes, no problems now. Here's Tucker Carlson to explain.
Yeah, man. I love those grocery carts. Could you imagine putting a coin in to get a cart?
Crazy. You fucking idiot. Ryan asks, So I can't fully
Soviets, Russia, coin slots you.
Nice. So I can't fully remember. Can Metamorpho change his body to any material, such as kryptonite, or was it restricted to earthly elements?
So it was restricted even further in the early days. It was only elements that could be found in the human body. Which is a lot of them, to be fair.
And that's kind of cool. Like, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to, like, scientifically, it's like, I can only expand the things that are already in me.
Yeah, like, he couldn't just be plutonium.
Yeah.
You know, like
I like that.
Like
That's a cool concept. It feels like you could, like, somehow scientifically explain that.
Well, I think the idea is like, well, those are the bits that were in him, and now he has control of them.
Yeah,
He can do that.
yeah.
You know, like, because they never really go into any specific of how his powers work, particularly.
Sure.
But, and again, in those early comics, you could tell that he would turn into an element.
Yes.
I will become hydrogen and float. I will become iron and be a metal. I will become oxygen and you can breathe. There was very little, like, making something more complex. Over time, that changed. Like I said, he could be steel or he could be bronze, like combinations of things, not just copper, like whatever. He could do stuff like that. He could also, beyond just the what he's made of, he can also change its state. So, for example, he could make himself carbon, but that could be coal, or that could be a diamond, or that could be, you know, like, he could take on a number of different forms. He could, let's see, and then eventually it opened up to just him having command of the elements.
Mm-hmm.
So no longer did it have to be that they were elements in the human body. It was just like the periodic table was his tapestry. He could do whatever and turn into whatever. He could do it selectively, like make one arm or one leg
that's cool.
a thing. He could also shapeshift, you know. He has quite a number of powers. The one thing he cannot do is make himself human. So he always has this kind of like, I'm a freak. He has a real, I mean, he has at different times been on the Doom Patrol, but like he has a
real Doom Patrol vibe.
He has a real Doom Patrol vibe, 100%. Well, isn't Bob Haney along with Arnold Drake, isn't he one of the creators of the Doom Patrol? It wouldn't surprise me. But at any rate, those are his powers. He now just has any element. Now, does that mean he could make kryptonite? I mean, possibly. I think it'd be difficult. And I do think even though he can do things like steel or whatever that are technically like combined things, he doesn't have, I would say, like total mastery of all molecules. Like, we got a question about this later. I'll go into it more later. But I have the feeling like Firestorm can do a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
And he's maybe a little more rudimentary.
Sure, that makes sense.
Be like, I could turn into carbon dioxide or what? Like, I could turn into that, but could I become, you know, sulfuric acid or something? It's like, oh man, like there's a lot of atoms in that. You kind of, you get the sense that there's a limit to the complexity of what he can turn into. So I guess it depends on like what is kryptonite.
Yeah,
that is where I'm going with that. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's leave Facebook and head on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram, take some questions and answer them.
Wow, you're really getting into that.
Oh, yeah, baby. I'm getting psyched for Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to go on so many dates.
Listen, I love our dates.
Nobody has a better time than us.
You're not Nobody is supping on the finest aphrodisiacs more than us.
I mean, truly. Like eating fucking oysters.
That was truly like that one date that we went on.
Probably the best date I've ever been on.
I mean, I haven't. Can't speak too loudly. I don't want to give away the goat here.
I mean, you also didn't want to tell your wife about the full extent of that date because of how good it was.
Because we've never been on it.
She might start wanting these.
Yeah. I got to keep this under wraps.
Yeah, I saved myself for you.
This is for me and me alone.
And me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. First question from Instagram comes
I'm
from
a generous lover.
Blake Von Sextron.
Yeah, baby.
Who asks,
speaking of,
why does DC refuse to give us more from the Terrifics?
Yeah, so the Terrifics was a team that came around right at the end of Dark Knight's Metal, the first Metal event.
Is this a Morrison thing?
No, it's a Lemire thing.
Oh, that's right. Yes. I knew it was somebody I liked.
Dale Eaglesham. And so basically, this team was Mr. Terrific, Phantom Girl, Metamorpho, and Plastic Man.
Fucking what a group.
So, like, essentially, Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but you had a stretchy guy. You had a genius. You had a monster man.
Yeah.
And you had a person that could be intangible. You were like, we're approximating a sort of science adventure Fantastic Four kind of team. They were bound together by some energy from the dark multiverse that meant that they couldn't be more than a mile apart from each other. They were literally like forced to be together. And so they formed this team that eventually became called the Terrifics. And they were going on like multiverse adventures, which was so cool and so much fun. That's the book that brings in like Tom Strong, like Alan Moore's.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Strong and stuff like that is in there. Eventually, Bizarro leads a team called the Terribles. They do two versions of a dark version of the Terrifics. At first, this character Doc Dredd, who is revealed to be Java. Doc Dredd makes a team called the Dreadfuls. And that one has Plasma Man, who is the plastic man from the Vampire Earth.
Oh, really?
So there's Plasma Man. There was Phantom Kid from Earth 13, like the magic Earth. There was Metamorpho from Earth 42, the robot universe. And then him. And then later there's like a Bizarro team called the Terribles. And it's Bizarro versions of them.
That.
And the Bizarro version of Metamorpho is called what's his name? His name is like something insane like Mr. Change or something like that. Like he has some fucking name like that. But what's great about that one is that he has the color patches like Metamorpho does, but he has such a handsome face.
Oh.
Like he looks good. He isn't a monster like Metamorpho.
Yeah.
Like that's the Bizarro thing is that he's like, no, I look great.
And everybody's going to be like, oh, God, you look disgusting.
Well, I mean, it is a Bizarro Earth, but fuck, I can't remember his name. But it's something like Mr. Change 'em Up or something like that.
Love that.
But that Terrifics team is so much fun and like some cool dynamics in there. They definitely play Plastic Man and Metamorpho in the kind of like Johnny Storm thing kind of way where it's like one's really jokey and the other one's like, why you're growing on me, kid, kind of like they definitely play them that way. In that story at one point Rex turns back human again. He loses his powers, but then of course Mr. Terrific's in trouble. He needs help, and Rex like has to decide, do I destroy the Orb of Ra or do I take the powers back and save my friend? And he becomes Metamorpho again and like gives up his quote normal life. He actually chooses it, which is good. Yeah, it's a really cool book. Really, really fun. Multiverse adventures. I would love more Terrifics. I would love even just to know that there's still a team out there. Like even if we didn't have the book right away, I would love some nod somewhere where it's like, oh no, we're the Terrifics. We go on adventures together that way. I think that would be a lot of fun.
But why won't they do it?
I don't know that they're refusing to. That's kind of a loaded question. It's not like someone was like, DC, will you do this? And they were like, never. Like, it's just that they haven't. It's not that I don't think they're refusing to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? We're really like editorializing in the question a little bit, you know?
Next question comes from Keegan Steedman, who asks, what's your favorite adaptation of the character? Personally, I found him to be a highlight in Beware the Batman.
Have you ever seen Beware the Batman?
Yeah.
It's good.
It's fucking great.
It did not get the love it deserved.
No.
I think part of it is I do think people were off-put by the 3D animation. That style.
Yeah, I didn't really like that.
Green Lantern, the animated series, great, but maybe a little bit more colorful. People were put off by Beware the Batman. I think the other thing that put people off with that one is Beware the Batman very smartly basically avoided every main Batman bad guy. They were only doing weird, like Professor Pig and like...
Sure.
They were only doing like weird shit and like...
But they definitely like...
But Metamorpho shows up in that one.
Well, they make him more of like a sad guy, right? Like
he's definitely sad, and he's definitely like more... He's kind of on a rampage because he's like, oh, I'm a monster. Like in the way that Batman villains can be, like Man-Bat or something like that. And I kind of liked treating him as like a sort of... like a Frankenstein's monster sort of thing like they did in that show. I think he's really well done. I also like his design. I think he looks really neat on Beware the Batman. They do a decent job of it on Justice League, like the Justice League cartoon we always talk about. In that one, they set Rex Mason up as like an old friend of Jon Stewart, so that he knew him. But then he's he becomes this thing and goes on the run, and the Justice League have to stop and help him, and that's an okay version. What's my favorite version? I do like him in the Terrifics. Yeah, God, is there a different Metamorpho version that I don't really love the Young Justice Metamorpho.
No,
he's kind of nothing.
What
he's
about
he's basically nothing.
What about the Brave and the Bold?
Brave and the Bold's pretty solid, but that cartoon is also like it has no business nailing characters the way it does. Like, because you would think that with its very obvious camp style, that it would inherently
not portray characters correctly.
Not even like vastly wrong, but that it's always going to be like its own thing. Yet it's so fucking precise. That Metamorpho's good. Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, the Beware the Batman one I do remember because that was a relatively early Metamorpho exposure, I think, for me. Mm-hmm. It's not really a character I knew a ton about. Yeah. No, I do like that one.
I like the
we're about to get a live action version.
Well, yeah, which I think is the next question. But did you ever read the Wednesday comics series?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've read. Well, I mean, not like all of them, but
I liked the little bit that they have with him in it, and I think like for me, I always like how. I like how like the lighthearted approach to Metamorpho. I think the tragic character thing is good, but we've got enough of those characters.
I think that's why the Terrifics was good though, because the Terrifics didn't like wash away the tragic thing, but you always had this other modeling something off the Fantastic Four is like not a bad idea.
No,
it's sort of
it's
like
something that DC has tried
formula.
And never really nailed.
Because the Ben Grimm thing is funny and sad, and they do kind of nail Metamorpho that way. I would say. So that's a pretty good version of that too. Yeah.
Next question comes from Jeff Attack, who asks, "Are you excited to see him in Gunn's new Superman? Any particular characterization or little moments you would like to see on the big screen?"
So he has been cast. We know Metamorpho is going to be in
Love the actor
Superman.
That's cast for him.
And the actor that's cast for him is the one that played like Zaz on Gotham.
Yeah.
He played the Mist on The Flash.
Yeah.
He's in all sorts of stuff.
He's on Barry, isn't he?
He's on Barry.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Anthony Kerrigan.
Yeah, he's
is
fucking
that his
awesome.
Name? Really good actor. I think well cast.
Yes.
as Metamorpho. Although maybe less well cast as Rex Mason, but I assume we're only seeing Metamorpho. Like, it's Superman's movie. All these characters must just be like populating the world, as opposed to it being like, we're going to explore all, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like,
it's more of like, now where he's facing this character now,
or it's like Superman goes over here to do a thing, he goes, hey, Metamorpho, thanks for the assist, as opposed to it being like, we need a team for this, the team is Metamorpho, hot girl. But like, I doubt it's that kind of, you know what I mean?
I would be surprised.
So we probably won't go too deep into it. I mean, so that being said, I think it's unlikely that we have the opportunity to explore much of, you know, his fraught relationship with Simon Stagg.
Sure.
The guy that like hired him initially, that he's still kind of stuck under the thumb of sometimes. Probably won't get into Sapphire Stagg, like his love. That's like Simon Stagg's daughter. Mm-hmm. I doubt we'll see Java. Like, we're not going to get into Metamorpho. But I guess, I mean, in the context of a Superman movie, I think I kind of would want to avoid sad Metamorpho, to your point. I'd sort of want to see the one that kind of has more of that Ben Grimm thing of like someone like joshes him and he's like, oh, you know, like kind of like, you know what I mean? That sort of energy of like, I'm here, like, I understand you're having a good time, but we got a job to do. Like, or, you know, like, I kind of hate being out in public, so let's just get this over with. You know, like, something like that you could play more of the fun of it and a little less of the sad, but you could still hint at, like, there must be a reason he doesn't like being public or something like, you know what I mean? I think that's probably all I would hope for at this stage of the game without knowing more about this movie, because I don't think we're setting this up as a Superman team movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's just that these people will just help populate the world a little bit.
I think so too. Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question from Delgado Andrew, who asks, why can't Metamorpho approximate human skin for himself? Is he stupid?
So this is the one rule with his powers. He cannot make himself human. They've never really given a great reason for it, other than he is no longer made of flesh and blood.
Yes.
That's not his default state, and then he has powers.
Yeah.
He's just not made of that anymore.
And flesh isn't an element, I guess?
Well, so there's that. Now, you can come back and say he does make things that are not just individual elements. But again, I think we're coming back to the level of complexity. You know, to make skin, to make blood, to make bone, to make muscle.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of different configurations of the same sort of elements, but they all work independently, move independently. And again, that's not his default state anymore. It's not just a thing he could revert to. He'd have to do it. And I feel like there's enough comic evidence, even if it's not explicitly said, to support the idea that Metamorpho more or less does simple things. I've become a gas. I've become a solid. I'm a diamond. It's just carbon in in a lattice formation, right? Like I am burn. I am bleh. And I think there's enough in there to be like, a human is way too complex. Even the idea of just making skin on the surface of him and not changing anything underneath it, like, I think skin is too complex for him. There's a lot in skin.
Does he have to know how something works to turn into it?
Well, this is the other thing. No. It's a little bit more intuitive. But again, I also think that's why it works like elementally.
Sure. My dear Watson.
Firestorm's thing, or, you know, some Matter Master or something like that, they typically need to know like the structure. But like Metamorpho could just turn into stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I think when it's easy, when it's just like, I'm lead, he just thinks it and his body does it. Because again, it's magic too. He's not like literally science-wise moving molecules around, which you can make the argument maybe Firestorm is at a subatomic level, like actually moving elements. Metamorpho controls the elements, but his powers are magic. So he just has to think it. But I do think there is a level of, as we talk about with magic a lot, there's cost and consequence, there's level of power, there's focus, there's all of these, like, how much power do you have to trade? And I don't know that Metamorpho has the power to do something as complex as make skin.
Yeah. No, that
in
makes
early
sense.
comics, he actually wore like a skin mask.
Oh, weird.
I mean, not made of skin, but like, like one that approximated skin.
Weird.
He would do that so he could be out in public or whatever. And then you kind of go like, so does it even matter that you can't be human again? And you go like, like,
fair.
But he had that in like some early adventures.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. With that, let's leave Instagram and then we'll take a
Today's episode is sponsored by Factor. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals make eating better every day easy. Wherever tomorrow takes you, be ready with pre-prepared, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. You'll have over 35 different options a week to choose from, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and more. And there's even more to enjoy with over 55 nutrition-packed add-ons that help make your weekly meal planning even more delicious. Fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant-quality 2-minute meals that are ready to heat and eat wherever you are. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, upscale options done easily. You can also get as much or as little as you need by choosing 6 to 18 meals per week. Plus, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. No prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are 100% ready to heat and eat, so there's no prepping, cooking, or cleanup needed. Get started today and have a feel-good week of meals ready to go. Head to factormeals.com/DrDC50 and use code DrDC50 to get 50% off. That's code DrDC50 at factormeals.com/DrDC50 to get 50% off. And now, back to the show.
And we're back.
It's like we never left.
And we're heading over to Reddit. It's because we didn't.
Where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
Correct. First question comes from Constipated Gandalf.
Yeah, one of the 5 shit-starry.
It shall not pass.
Yeah.
Theoretically, could Metamorpho turn himself into, say, regularly used resources, steel, iron, natural gas, etc., sacrificing his limbs and have them regenerate to become a one-man stop shop in solving the energy crisis?
So, Metamorpho, in some comics, there is sometimes the implication that Metamorpho, or those with his powers, can also start affecting things outside their own body.
Okay.
Sometimes, but that's usually a pretty loose implication, or it's very temporary. Metamorpho has, in the past, lost a piece of himself that has either done one of two things. Stayed connected to him in the way where, like, he could move it or control it, or something like that. Or it would move to try to get back to him or something like that.
Sure.
I'm thinking of like Danger Street, the Diamond Arm.
Sure.
Whatever. Or in one case, it regenerated on its own into a full version of him. There's a character called Shift. And but he initially was just Metamorpho, and then they were like discovered partway through there's another Metamorpho, and he's like, I'm the original Metamorpho, who are you? And they had this whole thing. So somehow that Metamorpho had enough matter to be a full extra being, right? Which means they must have incorporated matter from elsewhere in the way that Clayface or Sandman and Marvel or some of these kind of characters would like draw things in.
Mm-hmm.
That's not strictly speaking a Metamorpho power, but because he is a shapeshifter, because he can change his form and his size and stuff like that, the idea of how much matter is in him is, I don't know, it's tricky. Something like Danger Street says definitively he only has as much matter as he has because he cuts off his arm, his diamond arm, and trades it, And then when he doesn't have an arm when you keep cutting back to him. So implying he only has the matter he has. And then he can change it into stuff, but, you know. But then there's other versions like Shift is not like tiny Metamorpho. He's like full size. So is he just like super undense or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a great answer for this other than it's a comic. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think, though, in general, what is being proposed in here is highly unlikely. Like, the Shift thing was a weird one. And like I said, when he eventually reincorporates Shift and they become one being again, he did briefly just have the power of making these golems. But when he did that, it shut off his other powers. So he couldn't just, like, lose a bit of him and then, like, make that fuel and then, like, just keep regenerating and separating off other parts and making those fuel, because he couldn't do the two powers at the same time.
Oh, sure.
So no, I don't think he could do that. What he could absolutely do is in the short term, if it's like we'll never make it back to Earth, we don't have the rocket fuel or whatever, he could be like, I'll do it, and like turn himself into fuel, sacrifice him. Like, he could do shit like that. But could he just be like, it's okay, I'll make endless fuel?
Sure.
No, I don't think he could.
Fair. Next question. You just brought him up, but what's happening with Shift lately?
I mean, lately there is no Shift because like
it was like an Outsiders thing, wasn't it?
It was. So that Metamorpho on that Outsiders team, they were like, he's kind of different from how we remember. And then you learn that this is the duplicate made from a piece of Metamorpho that had kind of broken off or whatever and then regenerated. Eventually, that Metamorpho goes by the name Shift and takes a different human name. I think it's Rufus. Shift like is on that team for a bit and falls in love with Indigo, who's this other character. Then Indigo dies, and then Shift is upset by it, and eventually agrees to be reabsorbed into Metamorpho. And Metamorpho does that, and they become one being again, and that's the end of Shift. I don't think Shift has come back ever after that. So where is Shift lately? It's like just part of Metamorpho again, I think is the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Next question from Noobmaster69.
Nice.
Who asks, why does Metamorpho get more love than other C-list heroes? As I do enjoy the character, I don't really hear people begging for him, and yet we seem to get him fairly often.
I mean, he does show up a lot.
He's probably fun to write.
I actually, yeah, I mean, I was actually almost going to say the opposite. I think he's fun to draw.
Oh, interesting.
Metamorpho's design is awesome. Mm-hmm. The like purple, orange, like all these different textures and stuff like that. And then his powers are fun to draw. Like, what if this was huge? What if that's a gas?
Sure,
what if like, I got to imagine if you're like, we got to put someone else in this fight. You're like, can we do Metamorpho? Because like I could do so much with.
That's true.
If I were an artist, that would be the key for me, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, how much have you encountered Metamorpho? Because again, we started this episode, you were like, I can't believe we haven't talked about him. So it's like Metamorpho does kind of have this general like, oh, it's Metamorpho, but it's also like, is he anyone's favorite character? Like,
no, I think that like I've seen him in like Brave and the Bold. I've seen him in like the JLA. I read Year One.
Oh, like Metamorpho?
Yeah. The Wednesday Comics thing, the Terrifics. Like, I've seen a lot of the stuff.
Right.
I think, I think that, and then that's just the comic stuff. Like, he's in some TV stuff too, isn't he?
See, well, now, like, was he on Smallville? Did they ever do him on Smallville?
This is what I mean. Like, I think he does.
I don't think they did him on Arrowverse.
Because he shows up on Young Justice.
Yeah, but that one is like, he's like nothing on that show.
Sure.
Like, he's barely in it, and you get like almost no character. Like, especially because that season was called Outsiders, I was super disappointed
Yeah.
by the Metamorpho of it all.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's basically not there.
But like he does show up a lot.
He does, yeah. I mean, I do think the powers are cool. Shape-shifting, changing your state of matter, you know, having these kind of element powers. That's cool. There is the general hook of like man turned into monster kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Science powers are neat. And then again, you know, as an artist, what a fun character to draw. Like, sky's the limit, really. I don't know if I have a better answer than that, but like that's what I would think of in terms of like, why does he keep showing up?
Yeah.
I think he's just kind of fascinating. You know, like, yeah, I don't know. He's weird to look at, and his powers are hard to explain. And how do they work? What are the limits? I mean, like, none of us really know. You know, I think there's just something so curious about him, and I think there's sometimes with a character a certain level of like being enigmatic that way, where it's like we've never been able to define this, and every time we've tried, it's actually made him worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of better when it's just like, I don't know, could he do this? And you go like, I don't know.
Joker-esque.
I think there's something kind of like, if I were a creator, I'd be like, I've never really understood him, but I love it.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a long association with Batman as a member of the Outsiders. You go like, Metamorpho kind of like extended Bat family, the way Katana is and stuff. You
Weird.
Go, that's weird. And then you go, well, he should be on the Doom Patrol. He goes, he was for a bit, but that's actually like the bit that's weirder.
Yeah.
And you go like, oh, okay. Well, so like, what does he do? And it's like, well, he's over here on this fun, terrific, like, he's kind of perfect for slotting into these different groups.
He can kind of fit anywhere.
He fits in like a magic group. He fits in a science group. He fits in we need something like a powerhouse that's like hard for Batman and Superman to handle, because he shows up in Batman Superman World's Finest, the Mark Waid Dan Mora book. And you go like, that's great. And then you go like, yeah, but he's also got to be like he just slots in so easy. Not every story could be like a question story. Not every story could be whatever. And not every story can be a Metamorpho story, but I do think he's relatively malleable as far as like a guest character in an arc, in a story. I think you could find a lot of ways to use
totally.
to use him. And you know, he's not a genius. So he doesn't compete with someone like Flash or Batman that way. He's strong, so he's a tank, but he's not Superman. He has science powers, but he's not like, he can't do anything anytime.
He's not Firestorm, yeah.
Like, there's something kind of blue collar and everyman about Metamorpho, despite having all of these sort of crazy abilities.
It's true.
He's very relatable. I don't know. It's a sort of weird alchemy with that character, but he's kind of perfect in his own little way.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Next question from Dasbull23, who asks, who are his enemies?
So yeah, specific Metamorpho enemies. Well, I mean, first of all, he has some enemies from being on teams. So if you're talking about the Outsiders, then you're talking about like Baron Bedlam, or like, you know, like who were the people they were fighting in Markovia, or like things like that. Those all count. If you just in general, Simon Stagg, the industrialist that caused his accident / is always a pain in his ass. Sort of a sometimes ally, largely enemy. Java, obviously, enemy of Metamorpho. There are some bad Metamorphi. There's Acton.
It's the elementals?
Yeah.
Sure.
So Acton originally in the comics was a priest, but then was retconned to be a pharaoh. Acton is the pharaoh that Black Adam kills in olden times in Black Adam. In the comics, he's the first to crack the power of the Orb of Ra. He becomes the first Metamorpho.
Yeah.
There's another one who's like a Roman or something. His name is Algon, that ancient elemental. And he's also a bad element man. So there's a couple of those. Element Girl, who was what's her name? Urania Blackwell. She basically also just got exposed to the orb of rock, got the powers. Like a real Wally West scenario of just like, what if the exact same thing happened twice?
Sure.
And she had a villain called Stingery, who was her fiance, but then like was working for this like clandestine sort of like circle of spies kind of thing. She was like a CIA operative that then became Element Girl. I don't think I'm confusing her with someone else. So Stingery you could throw in there because Element Girl and Metamorpho teamed up to fight Stingery. I think for the most part you're gonna find people Metamorpho has fought tend to be fought by other people. He doesn't have a ton of like proprietary bad guys.
Was what the fuck the god of superhero Ahol or whatever?
All
That's it. Yeah,
it's not a Metamorpho bad guy really.
Because I've seen them fight.
I mean, is Metamorpho even in Milk Wars? I mean, yeah, he might have shown up in there, but like All is more tied to like the Doom Patrol of that era, and
maybe that's where
concept and stuff of in Milk Wars and that, but you don't really spend time on All.
Oh yeah, no, it was more of I think it was like a bigger narrative thing.
Metamorpho might have just shown up in there. But no, Metamorpho doesn't have like a ton of like proprietary villains. Lots of villains that other people have also fought, especially with the Outsiders.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's leave Reddit and head on over to the doc scored.
Fuck.
Yep. Doc score.
What was I doc scored?
Oh, well, just the Oscars.
Just won the Oscar, baby.
Yeah. Wow, you're so
What
tough.
was I scored, doc?
I mean, what was I doc scored is actually like really good.
Oh fuck!
You kind of
can we
fucked
just
it up
cut?
with the second
Can we
part.
just cut the second part?
That was actually like good.
Can we just make it look like I was great?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's not how this podcast works.
I understand.
That's actually the opposite of this podcast.
I know, and I want that fourth award, man.
Well, we really got to get into the news.
Yeah.
First question comes from Drago the Black Rose, who asks...
Is that Sean Connery? Are you doing Hunt for Red October, Sean Connery?
Yeah.
I'm
What
a little bit Russian. I don't know if you could tell.
Drago the Black Rose. What is the general opinion on Metamorpho? Like, does the overall DC universe like him? Is Metamorpho on the upper crust of the hero community?
Yeah, it's I think he's known. I do think there's a certain level of people don't quite know how to gauge his temperature. Like, not that they don't trust him necessarily, but I think he just, this is a man that puts up walls, I think there are a few people that know him well and know to trust him.
Sure.
And a bunch of people that aren't sure, that kind of need those first people to vouch for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, characters like Black Lightning, Katana, Halo, people that were on the Outsiders, Geoforce, people that were on the Outsiders with him would be like, yeah, I know Metamorpho. Yeah, if he says it's this, it's this. Batman, But like some other character, Green Lantern, would be like, Metamorpho. I've heard about him, I've seen him, but like, is he, you know what I mean? Like, I think he is a little bit of an, to use the term again, an outsider. And that's partly by choice. It's partly because he is frequently still in the employ or under the thumb of Simon Stagg, which puts him in this weird position of almost being like, kind of like sometimes like a blackmailed superhero.
Oh, that's weird.
Not like totally, like God, how many times has he fought Stagg or like figured out a way to beat him, or you know what I mean? But there is this sort of weird relationship where he wants to be with Sapphire and he puts up with Simon, and Simon keeps dangling the carrot of maybe I could cure you. He's also a character that largely doesn't like being what he is. He's so much of Metamorpho's comic stories and history are him trying to pursue a way to be human again.
Sure.
For a lot of it, even in the Terrifics where I said he makes the choice to be Metamorpho again, that's all well and good. But that if we got, 50 more issues, we'd circle back to that and he'd be like, I know I made the right choice, but I feel like I hate this. That's just, it's sort of fundamental to his character that it's miserable. And I'd argue it's fundamental to the idea of Metamorpho, because Element Girl had the same thing. She wanted to kill herself and she couldn't because she's just elements. You can't die. There's a later question about it, but that's a beat in Element Girl's story, is just wanting to / needing to die.
Jesus.
So I think a certain level of that kind of existential dread, those kind of, that sort of morose kind of thing is sort of fundamental to him, and that by nature makes you, I think, a less social hero, maybe a little bit less out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know that people would be like, who are the greatest heroes? Someone would be like, Metamorpho. Someone that knows him might say that, but and he will do what's right when called upon, but he's not public in the way that a lot of other heroes are.
Sure.
Next
question from Lilith, who asks, do you think Facade, Sandman number 20, did justice to the character of Urania Blackwell? She had a neat concept, but it's a bit tragic that she never really got a chance to shine.
So this is what I'm talking about. So this story beat for Element Girl, Urania Blackwell, happens in Sandman. Where, we haven't seen that character in a long time, because I think Element Girl was like a 60s, 70s thing. And so, in that very Sandman way, we're exploring these corners of the DC universe. And in that story, she's depressed. She's lived on her own. She also can't look human. She kind of is just sad and wants to die, but she can't because she's elements. And Death of the Endless basically tells her, I can't take you. But if you basically implore your patron god, Ra, to release you, then I can.
Wow.
And that's essentially what happens. She basically prays to Ra, and Ra goes, all right.
Wow.
And dispels her power and lets Death take her.
But if her power is dispelled, then isn't she back to being human?
Yeah.
Then
But at that point, she's like, I'm done.
Wow.
Because she's also the one who, her fiance became a bad guy. Or she's had all this kind of tragedy and heartbreak and stuff. She's like, I'm done.
Fair.
And so Ra grants her basically the ability to die, and then Death can take her. So, it's
Let's get to this week's sponsor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Factor. You got meals, baby. We got promo code.
Don't.
Promo code
Eat the
Elementary.
Bridge. Oh. Anyways, yes.
But yeah.
Urania.
I think it's a great beat. The Element Girl thing, whatever. We always try and do these things where we expand the family. It's fine. I think she was an interesting character. And I do think Sandman is a fitting end for her, but that's not quite the same as, did we use her to the fullest when we had her?
Sure.
Because a lot of her adventures, she's like, Metamorpho, can you help? So now it's the two of them together. It's not like she was holding down her own adventures that much.
Yeah.
So no, probably pretty wasted potential that way, but a really beautiful story in that Sandman one.
Next question from Mullet, who asks, whatever happened to Rex and Sapphire's son from the early 90s?
So Sapphire Stagg is the daughter of Simon Stagg, and Rex Mason's, one true love, right? She's the Lois Lane to his Clark Kent. And they did at one point have a kid, but something had happened. Metamorpho also dies a lot.
Oh, interesting.
Or is presumed dead, or Metamorpho dies a lot. So
isn't it the same thing though as Urania? Is that like a
well, but this is what I mean. He keeps coming back, but it's always like, oh, he turned himself into hydrogen and got burned up. And then later it's like, well, we reconstituted him or whatever. You know, like there's always like a thing later, but it takes like he technically can't die, but there's all these
you can't
moments.
get rid of matter, right? Like
well, no, exactly. But you can sort of make it so he's not around.
Sure.
Like technically, yeah, he always comes back, but it's like what happened in the intervening time. And I'm pretty sure in one of those, Sapphire has a kid. Because I'm pretty sure Metamorpho like misses a bunch of this kid's life, and I think it's because of that. The kid's name is Joey, and as I recall, he gets some powers.
Because doesn't he also take that name Shift?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I thought he did.
I don't think so. Joey, he gets powers, but I'm pretty sure his powers are more external. Mm-hmm. Like he can actually transmute elements outside of himself. Mm-hmm. He could do that kind of thing. Eventually, oh right, he can affect stuff outside of himself. I think eventually he like not destroys, but he like nullifies the Orb of Ra. Because the Orb of Ra is supposed to like nullify his powers, but his powers go outside, and so they cancel each other out. And he basically ends up being a normal human. Because I think part of the thing in that story is Rex is like, oh my god, I've made him a monster too. I can't do anything right. You know, like that's a classic Metamorpho kind of beat. Is like, oh, everything I touch turns to shit. You know,
sure.
But eventually, I think Joey just becomes human.
Oh, okay.
I don't know though, because we reset continuity and stuff. Like he might be out there, but I don't know what's up with Joey at this point in time, because he wasn't in the New 52 stuff, and he wasn't even in the metal stuff. But that's also before death metal, when we unraveled all the continuity and brought it back. So Joey could be out there.
We just haven't seen his story yet.
Joey Mason, and we just haven't seen his story. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Terrifics brought back Luke O'Brien, Offspring, Plastic Man's kid.
Sure.
Like, so, like, any of these characters could come back at any time.
Yeah.
But
not yet.
I don't think we've seen any sort of whisper of Joey.
Sure. Next question from Big McLargehuge.
Nice. Ladies.
Who asks, do you think DC intended for Roundhouse to be connected to Metamorpho and never got around to it?
Oh, Roundhouse, like the character in Teen Titans? Here's the thing. I didn't read a ton of that Teen Titans run that had like Roundhouse and Crush and characters like that in there. Roundhouse, DC. Let's just do a little quick look. Yeah, William Wu.
Because this is like Teen Titans Rebirth, right?
Yeah, and I've seen Roundhouse in stuff. I know a vague bit about him, but now I've got
that's William Wu.
Yeah, but why are we assuming that he might have been? He could transform his body into a ball. Yeah, he's got like bouncing boy powers.
Yeah.
But why would this be Brother Blood, Gizmo? I mean, I'm not...
Because, like, Roundhouse's powers are, like, mechanical, right?
Yeah, I'm... Other than him being able to shape change, I'm not seeing any connections, like, to the powers of Metamorpho. So,
it's really just transformation.
Well, and again, it's just physical. He's not, like, turning into something different. Mm. You know, like, it's not like when he becomes a ball, he also turns rubber, or he turns metal, or something. Like,
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure why we'd connect this to Metamorpho for anything other than the shape changing, but no, there's nothing in there that would lead me to believe that. If he's connected to anything, he's connected to Bouncing Boy.
Yeah.
You know, which Bouncing Boy drinks that like soda that gives him that power because he's like, oh, I'm so thirsty. They're like, Bouncing Boy, can you bring this strange chemical there? Or sorry, Chuck Tane, can you bring this strange chemical? He's walking. He's like, oh, I'm really thirsty. He drinks it and he becomes Bouncing Boy.
So stupid.
So if anything, Roundhouse should be connected to that. But since that's a chemical transformation, not a genetic thing, and Bouncing Boy's in the future, then you go like, well, if that's a chemical transformation, it might be connected to like Gingold, like elongated. If I was going to connect Roundhouse to any character, I'd be like Elongated Man.
Yeah,
exactly. Know, as opposed to even Plastic Man or something like that, or that. So almost certainly not Metamorpho. I'm not really sure why that would be a thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Next question.
I mean, this is me without having read very much of Roundhouse's stuff, so I might be missing a detail, but I can't think of how they'd be connected.
From the Lord, your butt, who asks, how does Metamorpho's transmutation ability contrast with Firestorm's?
So
now here's two characters that have an interesting connection, right?
Totally. And some of this, this is the part where we kind of go like, yeah, maybe it got said in issue somewhere, but I'm also speculating based on all the stuff I see and blah, blah, blah. Trying to make like an aggregate answer sometimes to these things. In general, I would say, as I've been saying through this episode, that Metamorpho's powers tend to be a little simpler. He can transmute, but instead of like Firestorm can be like, I turned the air into cotton candy.
Sure.
Like, so now it's like glucose or what, like complex kind of hydrocarbon forms and stuff like that. Whereas like Metamorpho, like the most you get is like, I put nickel and iron together, I made steel.
Sure.
Even steel's not that complicated, you know what I mean, or whatever. So there's a simplicity to Metamorpho's thing. The other like big difference is that Firestorm is not transmuting himself.
No.
And notably, Firestorm cannot transmute organic material. So anything organic, Firestorm can't manipulate. The only times that he has, it's been a wild accident. His powers have been acting up. Or it's been a version of him that is like where the Firestorm Matrix has been severely tampered with.
Sure.
Like Deathstorm, where half of him was an undead Black Lantern and the other half wasn't. And so they were straddling life and death. And that Deathstorm turned Jason Rush's girlfriend into a pillar of salt, which was like super fucked. So that's a big difference. In Doomsday Clock, Firestorm turns a bunch of people to glass by accident. Or does he? But, like, in general, Firestorm's powers do not affect organics. The Deathstorm from Earth 3 during Forever Evil, again, was a weird, like sort of unnatural kind of firestorm. And that one could affect organics. It unraveled Captain Cold's DNA. Jesus. Because that was the time period where the rogues had put all of their weapons into this gene splicer thing to give themselves their powers. And their powers went haywire because they didn't think it through. And the way that they undid that for Captain Cold was that Deathstorm ripped his DNA apart and basically removed his cold gun from his DNA. So there's that. And then the other piece is Metamorpho is magic, and like I say, because things are simpler, he just goes like hydrogen and like he can just be, or like I'm gonna be a gas, or I'm just gonna stretch or whatever. Firestorm very specifically needs to know how to build the molecules.
Okay.
He needs to know the chemical composition of things. That's the whole premise of the idea of it being being Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein. Martin Stein was the brains, Ronnie Raymond was the brawn. Or then Ronnie and Jason, or blah, blah, blah. Like, all of these combos, the idea was someone needs to know how to make the thing. Even in that Deathstorm example with the Pillar of Salt, Deathstorm's like, give me anything, give me anything. Jason's trying to close his mind off, and then it goes, and then Black Lantern Ronnie is like, oh, salt, NaCl, I know what I'm doing now. Like, finds it in his brain so that he can do it. Firestorm needs to know how to make the thing. That is fundamental to that power. Metamorpho doesn't. He might have a hard time doing something, but it's more just like, no, just like clear your mind, think helium, and then he could do it. He doesn't have to go like, helium is 2 protons. Like, he's not doing that kind of shit, right? So, I mean, those are fundamental differences. I would very strongly make the argument that Metamorpho cannot do things as complex as Firestorm can.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah. I also think it makes him less interesting if he can. The Firestorm one is interesting because you need to know how to do it. But if you could just like, oh, I just made anything, is kind of a bleh power if it doesn't come with some sort of like knowledge or work or focus or things like that. And I do like the idea because it's him and it's more like intuitive. It's like simple things.
I like that. Yeah.
Lead, titanium, like the things that are just on the periodic table. I like that idea.
Here's the last question from Shambling Mound of Flowers, who asks, what are the pieces of Metamorpho made of? Like, I know he can turn into any element, but when he's just like his normal metamorphy shape with the purple scales and orange lumps, what elements are those?
I mean, a great question, because they have distinct textures. So, the purple obviously has scales. The white leg obviously looks like it's sort of melty.
Yeah.
The orange side looks like it's a little like harder. But what does that mean? And how, like, what is he actually made of? I don't think they ever define it. New 52 Metamorpho had a slightly different look. One of the quadrants was like always looked like it was like off-gassing a little bit. I think one of his legs, in a lot of interpretations, is sort of made to look slightly crystalline. Definitely one of his arms is a little more scaly. The other one is... I don't know what the materials are meant to be. And I'm not sure that they're actually meant to be like, that's definitely like vanadium.
No.
That's like, I don't think it's like that. But they're definitely meant to evoke the idea of how fluid or changing he can be. They're definitely supposed to evoke different textures, hard, soft, smooth, rough. That is definitely deliberate in the design choice to have him be like 4 quadrants, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone was like, how do we draw lithium? Like, I don't think no one was doing that. I don't think. It's more just the general evoking of
textures and.
Yeah, he can be anything, the man of 1,000 forms. Like he had all these kind of nicknames in the early days and stuff like that. So, I don't think we know what those pieces
or they haven't been defined.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
No. Well, that was the last question, and before we go, let's take a quick break. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This time of the year can be tough. It's cold and dark outside, and you feel like you're all peopled out. How do you set boundaries and give yourself the alone time you need? Most people don't have an endless social battery. Therapy can help you listen to your body and give yourself the time to recharge. In the past few years, I have made choices that have improved every part of my life, and I honestly wouldn't have been able to do any of it without therapy. Through therapy, I have gained confidence and learned to draw important boundaries. If you want to make things better or just a bit easier, or you want somebody to talk to, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, so it's easier to fit into any schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can even switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DrDC today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DRDC. And we're back, only just to say farewell. We would love to hear from you residents. Why don't you send us a question for next week's episode?
Well, next week's episode,
we're going to be live.
That's live, baby. I don't know what the theme is for that.
Neither do I.
Well, we'll post it when we post it. But yeah, our next episode will be our live one from Toronto Comic-Con, so look forward to that.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
And if you're there, you can ask questions live.
Fine. No, seriously, yeah. No, come out and see us if you're in Toronto. If you're in the area, come to Toronto Comic-Con. Come see us. Our show is at 11:15 a.m. on Sunday, March 17th. Come check it out.
Also,
St. Paddy's Day.
If you want
the morn of St. Paddy's Day, really reasonably before you should be drinking.
Is it?
Paddy's Day is the 17th.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
We're going to get drunk at the airport.
Yeah, we're going to do a classic Who's Line Irish drinking song.
Oh, I am in an airport and I am really drunk.
His name is Metamorpho. His penis makes a thunk. Think we found our TikTok clip?
Yep. So if you can't wait for the extra content of next week, well, you're in luck because we've got a Patreon.
Baby, patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Discord, our amazing Discord fan community. At the higher levels, you get the double dose, our weekly bonus episode. And at that highest level, you get theme pools and you get extra series. There's Toretto Talks, our Fast and Furious rewatch. There's Bonding Time, the James Bond rewatch. And starting this month, Cerebros, the X-Men films rewatch that I'm doing with Matt Poulter.
I can't wait to find out what terrible thing Patrick Stewart has done.
Oh, you don't want to know.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Also, if you want even more content from us on the Sunday of Toronto Comic-Con,
keep it going,
as well as every single week.
It's good. Yeah,
we've got a whole other podcast.
Nice. Yeah. Hell yeah. Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch. We are going through every single episode of the CW Supernatural. We talk real world monster lore, behind the scenes stuff about the show. It's a grand old time, and we're doing a live show of that at 1 p.m.
That's right, baby.
On Sunday, March 17th. You might be a little bit drinking.
Yeah.
Oh, they're both named Sam and Dean.
What? Fucking what? I'm in an Impala, and I'm hunting for the ghosts.
My dad was at January 6th.
I think he might have been the host.
More of this live.
That's right.
Could you imagine how good this would be live?
Oh my God. As good.
Imagine we could edit it less.
As good, if not worse. That's it for this week.
Adios.
Ciao, ciao.
I'm a man of the superheroes. They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure. They are men of...
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.